Welcome to the Cozy Storytime, your peaceful space to unwind and relax. Before we start, make sure to subscribe and like the video for more cozy stories every night. So, where are you watching it from? And what are you doing right now? I hope you enjoyed this story. Close your eyes. Let your mind drift into the corridors of Hogwarts, where wonder and danger walk hand in hand. Listen to the soft echo of footsteps on stone floors, the gentle crackle of fire in the hearth, and the quiet murmur of secrets floating through the midnight air. Beyond these grand walls, a student discovers something they never imagined, something that sets them apart. Their blood carries a power even the Dark Lord desires. But in the depths of darkness, there is always light. Tonight, allow yourself to sink into the story. Let each word flow like a gentle spell, pulling you deeper into a world of mystery, courage, and magic. Welcome to the tale. Sleep well and dream deeply. Hogwarts had always been a place of mystery, but I never thought that I would be one of its mysteries. I was just another student, another face in the crowd, another young witch learning spells and brewing potions. There was nothing extraordinary about me, at least, that was what I had always believed. But all of that changed one evening in the flickering glow of candlelight when Professor Dumbledore himself called me into his office. I had never been to the headmaster's office before, and standing before the stone gargoyle that guarded it, I felt a strange mix of anxiety and curiosity. The password was spoken, sherbet lemon, and the statue moved aside, revealing the spiraling staircase that led to the grand chamber. My heart pounded in my chest as I ascended, unsure of why I had been summoned. Had I done something wrong? Had I failed a test? No, that didn't make sense. Professors McGonagall or Snape would have been the ones to handle that, not Dumbledore. When I stepped inside, the warmth of the room surprised me. The air smelled of old parchment and something sweet, perhaps lemon drops. Fawkes, the phoenix, sat perched near the window, his golden feathers shimmering under the candlelight. Portraits of former headmasters and headmistresses lined the walls, some of them sleeping, others watching me with mild interest. And there, behind the great wooden desk, sat Albus Dumbledore, his blue eyes twinkling as if he already knew what I was thinking. "Ah, come in, my dear," he said, his voice gentle yet powerful. "I believe we have much to discuss." I swallowed hard and stepped forward, my hands clasped together to stop them from trembling. "You must be wondering why you're here," he continued, his long fingers lacing together as he studied me. "There is something special about you, something you may not yet understand." I frowned. Special? That word didn't sit right with me. I wasn't special. I wasn't Harry Potter, who had survived the killing curse. I wasn't Hermione Granger, with her brilliant mind, or Ron Weasley, with his unwavering loyalty. I was just me. "I don't understand," I admitted, shifting on my feet. Dumbledore's expression softened. "There is something in your blood, something that makes you unique." He paused, as if carefully choosing his words. "You have a magic within you that is older than Hogwarts itself. A magic that certain people would go to great lengths to possess." I stared at him, my mouth dry. "My blood?" He nodded. "Yes. It is not merely magical, it is powerful in ways that even I do not fully comprehend. Your lineage is ancient, and with it comes both great potential and great danger. A lump formed in my throat. Danger? Dumbledore sighed and leaned back in his chair. There are those who would seek to use your blood for their own purposes. Magic, when concentrated in such a way, can be harnessed for good or for evil. You must understand, Voldemort has spent years searching for ways to strengthen himself beyond what is natural. If he were to learn about you, about what flows through your veins, he would not hesitate to seek you out. A shiver ran down my spine. The very name of Voldemort sent a chill through the castle's walls, even after all these years. My fingers clenched into fists. But why me? I've never noticed anything different. I've never done magic beyond what we've learned in class. Dumbledore smiled, but there was something sad in his expression. Magic is not always something we can see or understand right away. Sometimes it remains dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken. I exhaled shakily, trying to process his words. So, what am I supposed to do? Just pretend none of this is real? No, Dumbledore said firmly. You must be cautious. But you must also learn to understand your own power. It is not a curse, nor is it a burden. It is simply a part of who you are. And who you choose to be, that will make all the difference. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the gentle rustling of Fox's feathers. I wanted to ask more, wanted to understand, but before I could, Dumbledore rose from his seat and walked around the desk. He placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. You will not face this alone, he promised. There are those who will stand by your side. And, in time, you will come to see that this is not something to fear. His words comforted me, but the fear still lingered in the back of my mind. I wasn't ready to be part of something bigger. I wasn't ready to be hunted. But as I left his office that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life had just changed forever. The next few days passed in a blur. I tried to go about my normal routine, attending classes, studying for exams, laughing with friends in the common room, but there was an invisible weight pressing down on me. Every time I looked at my hands, I wondered what it was about my blood that made it so different. Why me? And then, the whispers started. At first, I thought I was imagining things. But in the quiet hallways, in the dim candlelit corridors, I could hear them. Soft murmurs. Echoes of words I couldn't quite make out. My heartbeat would quicken, my breath would catch in my throat. But when I turned around, there was no one there. It wasn't until I was in the library one evening, flipping through a book on ancient magical bloodlines, that I felt it. A shift in the air. The sensation of being watched. My skin prickled, and I forced myself to look up. There, standing between the bookshelves, was Draco Malfoy. His gray eyes locked onto mine, unreadable. He wasn't smirking, nor did he look hostile. He simply studied me, as if trying to solve a puzzle. I frowned. What? He tilted his head slightly. You tell me. My grip on the book tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Oh, I think you do. Something in his tone made my stomach turn. I swallowed hard, closing the book and tucking it under my arm. If you have something to say, Malfoy, just say it. His lips curled into a half smile. All I'm saying is, secrets don't stay hidden for long. Not at Hogwarts. With that, he turned on his heel and disappeared between the shelves, leaving me standing there, my heart racing. I didn't know what Malfoy knew, or how he knew it. But one thing was certain, my secret wasn't a secret anymore. And I had no idea what that meant for me. The whispers didn't stop after my encounter with Malfoy in the library. If anything, they became more frequent. I could feel them, hidden glances in the hallways, the way conversations hushed when I passed, the unsettling sensation that someone was always watching. Hogwarts had always been full of rumors, but this time, the rumor was about me. And I had no idea how far it had spread. By the time I reached the Great Hall for breakfast the next morning, my nerves were frayed. I slid into my usual seat at the long table, trying to act normal, but my hands trembled as I reached for a piece of toast. My friends were chatting about the upcoming Quidditch match between Gryffindor and Slytherin, but I could barely focus. Across the hall, at the Slytherin table, Malfoy was deep in conversation with Crabbe and Goyle. When he noticed me looking, he smirked and said something to them, causing them to laugh. My stomach twisted uncomfortably. He knows something. But how? A voice interrupted my thoughts. You alright? I looked up to find Harry Potter sitting across from me, his green eyes studying me with quiet concern. His round glasses were slightly fogged from the warmth of the hall, and his unruly black hair looked messier than usual. Hermione sat beside him, flipping through a thick book, while Ron was halfway through a mouthful of eggs. I'm fine, I said quickly, forcing a smile. Harry didn't look convinced. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice so only I could hear. I saw Malfoy talking about you earlier. He seemed interested. I nearly choked on my toast. What? Hermione glanced up from her book. Draco Malfoy is always interested in things he can use to his advantage. What did he say to you? I hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. If Dumbledore had been right, if my blood really did have some kind of power, then telling anyone could be dangerous. But I also knew that keeping secrets in Hogwarts never ended well. I exhaled slowly. In the library last night, I admitted, he told me that secrets don't stay hidden for long. I don't know how much he knows, but it's like he's watching me. Ron made a face. Well, that's not exactly new. Malfoy's always got his nose in everyone's business. But this feels different, I said. Like he's waiting for something. Harry's brow furrowed. He seemed to consider something for a moment before he leaned in even closer. Listen, he said seriously, if Malfoy knows something about you, something important, you need to be careful. He doesn't just talk for the sake of it. He's up to something. Hermione closed her book with a decisive snap. We should find out what he knows. And more importantly, how he knows it. I swallowed hard. But how? It's not like he's just going to tell me. We'll figure something out, Harry promised. In the meantime, stay close to us, alright? If Malfoy's got an interest in you, that means other people might, too. The way he said it made a shiver run down my spine. Harry had experience with being watched, being hunted. If he was worried, then I had a reason to be. The rest of the day passed in a haze of anxiety. I kept my head down in class, hoping to avoid any more unwanted attention, but it felt like every time I looked up, someone was staring. Whispers trailed behind me in the hallways. Even the portraits seemed to murmur as I passed. It was suffocating. By the time evening rolled around, I was exhausted. The Gryffindor common room was warm and lively, the fire crackling in the hearth while students lounged in armchairs and finished their homework. I found a quiet corner and sank into the cushions, trying to clear my head. But then, the portrait hole swung open and Harry slipped inside, his face tight with determination. He scanned the room until his eyes locked onto mine, and in an instant, I knew something was wrong. "Come with me," he said. I didn't ask questions. I just got up and followed. He led me through the winding corridors of Hogwarts, his footsteps quick and silent. We didn't speak until we reached an empty classroom on the 4th floor. The moment we stepped inside, he shut the door behind us and turned to face me. "I need you to be honest with me," he said. "Has anyone said anything to you about your blood?" My breath caught. "How do you?" "I overheard Malfoy talking to Pansy Parkinson in the corridor," he said grimly. "He said something about valuable magic and that he was going to get there first." The room suddenly felt too small. My pulse pounded in my ears. "Get where first?" I whispered. Harry shook his head. "I don't know. But if Malfoy is trying to get something or someone before someone else does, that's not good." I sank onto one of the old wooden desks, my legs feeling weak. "Dumbledore told me that there's something different about my blood," I admitted. "That it's old magic, and that some people might want to use it." Harry's jaw tightened. "Then Malfoy knows more than he should." A heavy silence filled the room. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then, Harry took a step closer, his expression serious. "You need to be careful. I know what it's like to have something inside you that people want. You might not see it now, but you're in danger." I swallowed hard, trying to push down the rising fear in my chest. "So what do I do?" "You don't face this alone," he said firmly. "Malfoy might be watching you, but we'll be watching him. And if anything happens, if you feel like something isn't right, you tell me. No matter what." His words should have reassured me, but deep down, I knew that things were only going to get worse. If Malfoy wanted something from me, I doubted he would give up easily. And if Harry was right, if others were looking for me too, then this was only the beginning. As we left the classroom and made our way back to Gryffindor Tower, I tried to shake the feeling of unease that clung to me like a shadow. But in my heart, I knew. Hogwarts was no longer just a school to me. It was becoming a battlefield. For the next few days, I tried my best to ignore the growing tension that seemed to follow me everywhere. But no matter where I went, I felt it, eyes watching me, whispers trailing behind me, an unshakable sense of unease. Even the castle itself seemed different, as if the very walls knew that something was stirring. Harry and Hermione kept a close watch on Malfoy, but he was good at hiding things. He carried himself with the same arrogant confidence as always, surrounded by Crabbe and Goyle, sneering at first years and making snide comments at the Gryffindors. But there were moments, brief but unmistakable, when he would look at me with an expression that I couldn't quite place. It wasn't just curiosity. It was calculation. I tried to act like everything was normal, but inside, I was unraveling. If Malfoy knew about my blood, how much did he know? And more importantly, what did he want? I didn't have to wait long to find out. It was late in the evening when it happened. The castle was quiet, with most students either in their common rooms or asleep. I had stayed behind in the library, hoping to find something, anything, that might help me understand what Dumbledore had told me. But the dusty old books offered little more than cryptic hints about ancient bloodlines and lost magic, nothing concrete. Frustrated, I gathered my things and made my way back toward Gryffindor Tower. The corridors were dimly lit, the torches flickering as I walked. The sound of my own footsteps echoed faintly off the stone walls. I turned a corner near the entrance to the astronomy tower, planning to take a shortcut, when I heard a voice, low and unmistakable. Wandering the castle alone at night? Brave, but not very smart. I froze. Malfoy. He was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, his pale face half hidden in the shadows. His usual smirk was there, but his eyes were sharper than usual, studying me carefully. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to stay calm. "What do you want, Malfoy?" He pushed off the wall and stepped closer, his movements slow, deliberate. "That's the real question, isn't it?" he mused. "What do I want?" He tilted his head slightly, as if considering something. Or maybe the better question is, what do you want? I clenched my jaw. "I want to go to bed." Malfoy chuckled. "Oh, come on. No need to act so hostile. I'm trying to have a conversation. Forgive me if I don't feel like chatting with someone who's been watching me like a hawk for the past week." He raised an eyebrow. "You noticed?" "Impressive." I thought I was being subtle. I folded my arms. "You're not as subtle as you think." He let out a quiet laugh, then took another step forward. "All right, I'll get to the point. I know there's something special about you." His voice was quieter now, almost a whisper. "Something different." My stomach twisted, but I kept my expression neutral. "I don't know what you're talking about." Malfoy's smirk widened. "Lying doesn't suit you." I said nothing, refusing to give him the satisfaction of a reaction. After a moment, he sighed. "Look, I don't know exactly what it is, but I know enough. And more importantly, so does he." I tensed. "He?" Malfoy's gray eyes gleamed. "You know who I mean." A cold chill ran down my spine. "Voldemort." I took a slow step back, but Malfoy didn't move. His expression remained unreadable, but there was something else there now, something that almost looked like hesitation. "He's interested in you," Malfoy continued. "And trust me, that's not something you should take lightly." My mouth was dry, but I forced myself to speak. "Why are you telling me this?" He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his platinum blonde hair. "Because you have a choice." I frowned. "A choice?" Malfoy nodded. "You're valuable. Whether you realize it or not, you have something that people would do anything to get their hands on." The Dark Lord, he hesitated, then corrected himself. "Voldemort, he doesn't want to kill you. At least, not yet. He wants to use you. And if you're smart, you'll make sure you're on the winning side." I stiffened. "You mean his side?" Malfoy's gaze didn't waver. It's not as black and white as you think. I stared at him, my mind racing. Was he seriously trying to get me to join Voldemort? Did he really think I would betray everyone, just because I had some rare magic in my blood? I shook my head. I'd rather die than help him. Malfoy sighed, almost as if he'd expected that answer. You Gryffindors and your heroic nonsense, he muttered. You don't get it, do you? This isn't about good and evil. It's about survival. People like you always say that, I shot back. Right before they do something unforgivable. Malfoy's jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought he might snap back with some cruel remark, but instead, he just stared at me, an unreadable expression flickering across his face. Then, in a softer voice, he said, You think you have time. But you don't. A tense silence stretched between us. Then, just as quickly as he had appeared, Malfoy turned away. Think about what I said, he murmured over his shoulder. Because sooner or later, you'll have to choose. And with that, he disappeared down the corridor, his footsteps fading into the darkness. I stood there for a long time, my heartbeat hammering in my ears. A choice. That's what he had called it. But it didn't feel like a choice at all. It felt like a warning. And worse, it felt like a threat. I needed to tell Harry. I needed to tell Dumbledore. But most of all, I needed to figure out how to protect myself. Because if Malfoy was right, if Voldemort really did know about me, then I wasn't just another student at Hogwarts anymore. I was a target. And I wasn't sure how long I had before the darkness finally came for me. Underscore 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 underscore. I barely slept that night. Malfoy's words echoed in my mind, looping over and over like a curse. He's interested in you. You have a choice. You don't have time. No matter how much I tried to tell myself that Malfoy was just messing with me, I knew deep down that he wasn't lying. If Voldemort really had taken an interest in me, then I wasn't just in danger, I was being hunted. By the time morning came, I felt like a ghost, drifting through the day in a haze. Classes blurred together, and even Hermione's usual lectures about studying harder barely registered. I avoided talking to Harry and Ron during breakfast, worried that if I opened my mouth, I'd spill everything right there in the Great Hall. Instead, I kept my head down, pushing food around my plate without eating. Malfoy, of course, was watching. He didn't approach me, but I could feel his gaze from across the room. He wasn't smirking this time. If anything, he looked expectant. Like he was waiting. By the time the last class of the day ended, I knew I couldn't keep this to myself any longer. I needed to talk to someone. I found Harry in the Gryffindor common room, sitting in an armchair near the fire. Ron was next to him, flipping through a book on Quidditch strategies, while Hermione was, predictably, going through her notes for the upcoming exams. I hesitated. How do I even start this conversation? As if sensing my hesitation, Harry looked up and gave me a small, knowing nod. Let's take a walk, he said simply. Ron blinked. Where are you two going? Just for a chat, Harry replied, already standing. We'll be back soon. Hermione glanced up at me, frowning slightly, but she didn't ask any questions. I followed Harry out of the common room, down the winding corridors of Hogwarts. The castle was quieter now, most students heading back to their dormitories. When we reached a more secluded hallway near the old Charms classroom, Harry stopped and turned to me. All right, he said. What happened? I took a deep breath. Malfoy cornered me last night. His expression darkened. What did he say? I hesitated, then told him everything, the way Malfoy had been watching me, the things he'd said about Voldemort knowing about me, the so-called choice he had offered. When I finished, Harry's fists were clenched so tightly his knuckles were white. That git, he muttered. I knew he was up to something, but this is worse than I thought. What do I do, Harry? My voice was quieter than I meant it to be. He exhaled, running a hand through his messy black hair. First, we tell Dumbledore. I opened my mouth to protest, but he cut me off. I know you probably don't want to, but this isn't just about you anymore. If Voldemort is involved, we need to be prepared. I nodded reluctantly. He was right. As much as I wanted to pretend I could handle this on my own, I couldn't. We made our way to Dumbledore's office, the castle feeling eerily quiet as we walked. When we reached the familiar stone gargoyle guarding the entrance, Harry spoke the password, Sherbet Lemon. The gargoyle sprang to life, revealing the spiraling staircase that led up to Dumbledore's office. The headmaster was seated behind his great wooden desk, his piercing blue eyes twinkling behind his half-moon glasses. Fawkes, his phoenix, perched on a golden stand nearby, watching us silently. Ah, Mr. Potter, Miss, your last name, Dumbledore greeted us warmly. To what do I owe the pleasure? Harry wasted no time. It's about Malfoy. Dumbledore's expression didn't change, but I could sense the way his gaze sharpened slightly. Go on. I hesitated, then repeated everything Malfoy had told me. This time, saying it aloud in front of Dumbledore made it feel even more real. When I finished, the room was silent for a long moment. Dumbledore finally leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. I see. Harry shifted impatiently. What do we do? Dumbledore regarded us for a long moment before speaking. Firstly, Miss, your last name, I must commend you for coming forward with this information. It was not an easy burden to bear alone. I swallowed. What does this mean, Professor? Is Voldemort really looking for me? Dumbledore's expression softened slightly. I cannot say for certain, but if Draco Malfoy has indeed been instructed to approach you, then it is likely that Lord Voldemort believes your magic, your blood, to be of great value to him. Harry tensed. So he wants to use them? Dumbledore nodded. It is likely. Ancient magic tied to blood is not something he would overlook. A cold dread settled in my stomach. Dumbledore folded his hands on his desk. For now, I must ask you to be extremely cautious. You must not be alone if it can be helped. Harry, Miss Granger, and Mr. Weasley will stay close to you at all times. Harry nodded immediately. Of course. Dumbledore continued, I will also be keeping a closer watch on Mr. Malfoy. That, at least, made me feel a little better. After a few more reassurances, we left Dumbledore's office. Harry walked beside me as we made our way back to the common room, his expression unreadable. "You alright?" he asked quietly. I forced a small smile. "Not really." He sighed. "Yeah, me neither." We walked in silence for a moment before he added, "We'll figure this out. You're not alone in this." And for the first time in a while, I believed him. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Something big. And I wasn't sure if I was ready. The next few days passed in a strange haze. I did everything I could to act normal, attending classes, doing my assignments, pretending I wasn't constantly looking over my shoulder, but the weight of what I knew was like a shadow that followed me everywhere. Harry, Hermione, and Ron barely left my side. Even when I insisted I was fine, they wouldn't hear it. Hermione took to dragging me to the library more often, claiming we needed to look into something, though I knew it was just an excuse to keep me busy. Ron stuck closer than usual, his easygoing jokes not quite masking the concern in his eyes. And Harry, he watched everything like a hawk, his protective instincts dialed up to 11. Despite their efforts, though, the unease didn't go away. Especially not when Malfoy was still watching. Every time I caught his gaze, he held it just a little too long before looking away, his expression unreadable. He didn't approach me again, didn't speak to me, but I knew he was waiting for something. And that was almost worse. Then, one evening, he finally made his move. It was after dinner, and I was walking alone down one of the quieter corridors near the Charms classroom. It was a shortcut back to Gryffindor Tower, one I had taken 100 times before, but tonight the air felt heavier, charged with something I couldn't quite name. I sensed him before I saw him. A presence lingering just beyond the torchlight, waiting. Then, you're predictable, you know that? I stopped in my tracks. Malfoy. He stepped out from the shadows, arms crossed, a lazy smirk on his face. His slithering robes billowed slightly as he moved, his posture relaxed, almost casual. But there was a sharpness in his eyes that told me this wasn't just another one of his games. I exhaled slowly. "What do you want now, Malfoy?" He tilted his head. "I gave you time to think." I stiffened. So that's what this was about. "And I already told you my answer," I said firmly. Malfoy let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. "I figured you'd say that. You Gryffindors never know when to make the smart choice." I crossed my arms. "And what's the smart choice? Betraying everything and everyone I care about?" His smirk didn't waver. "See, that's your problem. You think everything is about sides. Good and evil. Light and dark." He took a slow step forward. "But what if I told you there's a way for you to control your own fate? To stop being a target?" I narrowed my eyes. "What are you talking about?" Malfoy leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "You're powerful. More powerful than you even realize. And right now, you're just letting other people decide what to do with that power." My stomach twisted. "No one is deciding anything for me." He arched a brow. "Really?" "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like Dumbledore's keeping secrets from you. Like Potter and his little fan club are constantly hovering over you, making sure you don't step out of line. I clench my fists. They're protecting me. They're controlling you. Malfoy's voice was smooth, almost coaxing. You have something everyone wants. Voldemort. Dumbledore. Even Potter. But do you even know what you want? I hesitated, and that was all the opening he needed. See, you're not sure, are you? He took another step closer. But I can help you. I can teach you how to use what's inside you. How to make sure no one can ever use you or hurt you again. His voice was almost hypnotic. A small part of me wondered what would happen if I did listen to him. If I did take control of my magic instead of being afraid of it. But then I saw it. Just for a second, his mask slipped. Beneath the cool confidence, beneath the silver-tongued persuasion, there was something else. Desperation. Malfoy needed me to say yes. And suddenly, I understood. This isn't about helping me, I said slowly. This is about you. Isn't it? His smirk faltered. Just a fraction. I stepped closer this time, watching his reaction. You're in over your head. He's giving you orders, isn't he? His jaw tightened. I exhaled. You don't have a choice in this, do you? For the briefest moment, something flickered across his face. Something vulnerable. Then, just as quickly, the mask snapped back into place. He scoffed, rolling his eyes. You really think you know everything, don't you? I didn't answer. Malfoy let out a sharp breath, running a hand through his hair. Look, this is your last chance. The Dark Lord is watching you. And if you keep pretending this isn't real, you're going to regret it. I swallowed hard. Is that a threat? He held my gaze. It's a warning. A beat of silence. Then, with a swirl of his cloak, he turned and disappeared into the shadows. I let out a shaky breath, my heart pounding. I had won this round. But I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep winning. Because one thing was clear. The storm was coming. And I wasn't sure I was ready to face it. The conversation with Malfoy stayed with me long after he disappeared. His words coiled around my thoughts like creeping vines, tightening with every passing hour. No matter how much I tried to push them away, they kept coming back. You're powerful. More powerful than you even realize. Do you even know what you want? The Dark Lord is watching you. The worst part? He wasn't wrong. I had spent so much time being afraid of my magic, of Voldemort, of what might happen if I let myself really use the power inside me. But now, I was beginning to realize that fear wouldn't protect me. It wouldn't stop Voldemort from coming. And it wouldn't stop Malfoy from trying again. I didn't tell Harry about our conversation. Not yet. He was already on edge, already watching me too closely. If he knew Malfoy had approached me again, he'd go straight to Dumbledore, and I wasn't sure I wanted that. Because deep down, a part of me needed to understand. What was it about my blood that made me special? Why was Voldemort so interested in me? And why did Malfoy care so much about what I chose? I didn't have answers yet, but I was going to find them. The next day, I waited until after classes to slip away from the Gryffindor common room. It wasn't easy. Harry and Ron had been practically glued to my side all day, and Hermione kept giving me pointed looks like she knew I was hiding something. But eventually, I managed to convince them I needed some time alone to study. They didn't like it, but they let me go. I didn't go to the library, though. I went to the restricted section. It wasn't my first time sneaking in. I had been with Harry and Hermione before during first year, and I still remembered the way the air felt heavier here, the dim candlelight casting long shadows against the towering shelves of forbidden books. I ran my fingers along the spines, scanning the titles. Ancient bloodlines of the wizarding world. The lost magics of old. Cursed blood and dark rituals. That one made me shiver, but I grabbed it anyway. As I pulled out another book, a voice cut through the silence. I was wondering when you'd come here. I froze. Spinning around, my heart lurched when I saw Malfoy leaning casually against a nearby bookshelf, arms crossed. I instinctively clutched the book tighter. What are you doing here? He raised an eyebrow. I could ask you the same thing. I didn't answer. Malfoy smirked. You're looking for answers, aren't you? I gritted my teeth. Why do you care? He stepped closer, his expression unreadable. Because I know what it feels like. That stopped me. I stared at him. What? For a split second, his mask slipped again. Just like before. And for the first time, I saw something in his eyes that wasn't arrogance or cruelty. I saw exhaustion. I know what it's like, he said quietly. To feel like you don't have control over your own life. To have everyone telling you what you should do, what you have to do. I didn't know what to say. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the vulnerability was gone. Malfoy rolled his eyes, his usual smirk returning. But unlike you, I'm not stupid enough to pretend the danger isn't real. I exhaled sharply. I know it's real. Do you? He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're still hoping Potter and Dumbledore will save you. I stiffened. He smirked. I hate to break it to you, but they can't protect you forever. I swallowed hard. He was right about that, too. Malfoy glanced at the book in my hands, then back at me. Go ahead. Look for answers. But you won't find them in there. Before I could reply, he turned and disappeared down the aisle, leaving me standing there, my pulse hammering in my ears. I looked down at the book. And, despite everything, I opened it. The pages were filled with old, faded text, diagrams of ritual circles, and mentions of something called sanguis magicae, blood magic. I read late into the night, my fingers trembling as I turned each page. And what I found chilled me to my core. Blood magic wasn't just about power, it was ancient, deep magic, tied directly to one's lineage. It wasn't something that could be learned, it was something you were born with. And those who possessed it were rare and valuable. My breath caught as I reached a section about blood being used in dark rituals. Some wizards had the ability to enhance spells through their own blood, turning ordinary magic into something far greater, or far deadlier. I felt sick. This was why Voldemort was after me. He didn't just want my magic. He wanted my blood. I snapped the book shut, my hands shaking. I needed to get out of here. I shoved the book back onto the shelf and hurried toward the exit, my heart pounding. But as I turned the corner, a shadow loomed in front of me. Going somewhere? I gasped, stumbling back as Professor Snape emerged from the darkness, his black robes billowing. His dark eyes locked onto me, sharp and knowing. For a moment, silence stretched between us. Then he spoke, his voice like silk. "Curious thing," he murmured, "to find a Gryffindor lurking in the restricted section at this hour." I swallowed hard. "Professor, I was just looking for answers." His gaze flicked to the shelf behind me. "How very Slytherin of you." I didn't dare move. Snape studied me for a long moment, then exhaled through his nose. 10 points from Gryffindor. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Then he leaned in slightly, his voice quieter now. "Go back to your dormitory." I hesitated. But now, I didn't argue. I turned and hurried out of the library, my mind spinning. I knew the truth now, and that changed everything. Because Voldemort didn't just want me. He needed me. And that meant I had something no one else did. Something even he couldn't control. For the first time, a thought struck me, one I never would have considered before. If Voldemort wanted my power so badly, then maybe, just maybe, I could use it against him. Sleep did not come easily that night. Even after I returned to the Gryffindor dormitory, after I buried myself under the blankets and stared at the canopy of my bed, my mind wouldn't quiet. The words I had read in the restricted section echoed in my head. The power in my blood wasn't just a gift, it was a curse. A beacon that had drawn Voldemort's attention. He wanted it. Needed it. But what if I refused to be used? What if I turned the tables? The idea unsettled me as much as it intrigued me. I had always been afraid of my magic, of the strange surges that sometimes pulsed through me when I was overwhelmed. But now, fear wasn't an option. If Voldemort saw my blood as a weapon, then maybe it was time I wielded it before someone else did. Still, there was one problem. I had no idea how. The next morning, I was quieter than usual at breakfast. Hermione noticed immediately, of course. "You were out late last night," she said, her voice soft but firm. I nearly choked on my pumpkin juice. "What?" She arched a brow. "I saw you sneaking back in. And you looked," she hesitated, "like you'd seen a ghost." Ron leaned in, lowering his voice. "All right, what's going on?" "You've been acting weird for days." Harry, who had been silent so far, finally spoke. "Is it Malfoy?" My heart skipped. "What?" Harry's green eyes sharpened. "Did he do something?" I hesitated. If I told them the truth, they would demand I go to Dumbledore. But I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. So I shook my head. "It's nothing." Hermione didn't believe me. "You always say that." Ron frowned. "Yeah, mate, you're a terrible liar." I opened my mouth to argue, but just then, something strange happened. Malfoy walked into the Great Hall, as usual, but his posture was different, rigid, like he was uncomfortable. And, for once, he wasn't flanked by Crab and Goyle. Even stranger? He didn't look at me. Not once. My stomach twisted. Something was wrong. I didn't see Malfoy again until later that evening, while I was walking alone down one of the quieter corridors. I wasn't looking for him. I had been on my way back from the astronomy tower, trying to clear my thoughts. But when I turned a corner, I nearly crashed into him. He flinched back, like he hadn't expected to see me either. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, I saw it. A bruise half hidden beneath his collar. My stomach dropped. What happened to you? Malfoy scowled. None of your business. I wasn't convinced. Did he do that? His jaw clenched. I said it's none of your business. But it was my business. Because I suddenly understood why he had looked so stiff earlier. Why he hadn't spoken to me all day. Voldemort wasn't happy with him. I swallowed. Did you tell him about me? Malfoy's hands curled into fists. Of course not. I stared at him. Then why? Because he knows I spoke to you, Malfoy snapped. His voice was low, but I could hear the tension in it. And he didn't like that I didn't bring you straight to him. A shiver ran down my spine. Voldemort was watching. Even when I thought I was safe at Hogwarts, his influence was there, creeping in like poison. Malfoy sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. Look, I warned you. He won't stop coming after you. And if you don't make a choice soon... I have made a choice, I interrupted. And it's not his side. Malfoy shook his head. You still don't get it. Then explain it to me. For a moment, he looked like he might. But then, footsteps echoed down the hall. We both froze. Malfoy took a step back, his expression shutting down. We shouldn't be seen talking. I wanted to argue, but he was already disappearing into the shadows. The moment he was gone, I let out a shaky breath. The walls of Hogwarts were starting to feel smaller, and the storm was closer than ever. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat by the fire in the common room, staring into the flames, my mind racing. If Voldemort was going to keep coming for me, I needed to be ready. And that meant learning how to use my power. On my terms. I didn't know where to start, but I knew who might. Hermione. I found her in the library the next morning, exactly where I knew she'd be. She looked up as I sat down across from her, narrowing her eyes. You're finally ready to talk, then? I exhaled. Yeah. Her expression softened. All right. What's going on? I hesitated. Then, carefully, I told her. Not everything. Not about Malfoy or the warning Voldemort had sent him. But about my blood. About what I had found in the restricted section. About the power inside me that I didn't understand. By the time I finished, Hermione looked pale. She swallowed. That's dark magic, you know. I nodded. I know. She bit her lip. And you want to learn how to use it? I met her gaze. I want to learn how to control it. So no one else can. Hermione studied me for a long time. Then, finally, she sighed. "All right," she said. "But if we're going to do this, we're doing it properly. No reckless experimenting. No sneaking off alone." Relief flooded me. "So you'll help?" She gave me a stern look. "You're my friend. Of course I'll help." And just like that, I wasn't alone. Over the next few days, Hermione and I began researching everything we could about blood magic, its history, its risks, and how it could be used safely. Most of what we found was terrifying. Blood magic was dangerous, unpredictable, and, in the wrong hands, deadly. But in the right hands, it could be powerful. And I needed every advantage I could get. But then, just as I was starting to feel like I had some control again, everything changed. One evening, as I was leaving the library, a cold sensation prickled at my skin. I turned, and there, just outside the castle doors, stood a figure in the darkness. Tall, cloaked, watching, waiting. My heart pounded. Voldemort's reach had found me. And this time, there was no running. The figure outside the castle didn't move. Neither did I. For a moment, the world around me seemed to still. No wind, no distant voices of students, no sound at all except the pounding of my own heartbeat. I knew without a doubt who was behind that hood. Voldemort's reach had finally broken through the walls of Hogwarts. I swallowed hard, forcing my body to remain still. Running wouldn't help. Whoever this was had come for me, and if they had managed to get this close, it meant that whatever protections Hogwarts had in place weren't enough to keep them out. Slowly, the figure stepped forward, the dim torchlight from the castle entrance flickering across their robes. I gritted my teeth. If this was a Death Eater, I wasn't going to let them drag me to Voldemort without a fight. "Are you going to stand there all night?" a familiar voice drawled. My stomach dropped. "Malfoy." I let out a sharp breath. "Are you insane?" I hissed. "What the hell are you doing out here?" He pulled back his hood, looking unimpressed. "Relax, would you?" His silver eyes flicked over me. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I scowled. "You can't just lurk outside like that. You nearly gave me a heart attack." Malfoy shrugged, unbothered. "You're lucky it's me and not someone worse." I narrowed my eyes. "And what if it had been someone worse?" "You think you can protect yourself against a Death Eater?" Malfoy's smirk faltered slightly. "You're assuming they'd attack me." I hesitated. Right. Because in Voldemort's eyes, Malfoy was still useful. But me? I was prey. I sighed, glancing back toward the castle. "Why are you out here?" Malfoy shoved his hands into his pockets. "I needed to talk to you. Alone." A prickle of unease ran through me. "About what?" He hesitated. And for the first time in all the times I had spoken to Malfoy, he looked uncertain. Almost torn. "The Dark Lord is getting impatient," he said finally. "You keep stalling, and he's noticing." I clenched my fists. "I never agreed to anything." Malfoy let out a frustrated breath. "That doesn't matter. He thinks you're valuable. That means he's not going to wait forever for you to realize it." I shook my head. No. It means he's getting desperate. Malfoy blinked. I took a step closer, my heart racing. If he really thought I was his to claim, he wouldn't have sent you to convince me. He wouldn't need to. I exhaled. He's worried. Malfoy opened his mouth to argue, but then shut it. I could see it in his face. He knew I was right. Voldemort wasn't offering me a place by his side because he wanted to, he was doing it because he needed me. And people like him? They didn't need others unless they felt threatened. And that meant I had something that even he couldn't control. Power. Real, undeniable power. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. I embraced it. Malfoy must have seen the shift in my expression because his own face hardened. You have no idea what you're doing, he muttered. Maybe, I admitted. But neither does he. Malfoy's hands curled into fists. If you defy him, he'll kill you. I smiled. A small, knowing smile. He can try. Malfoy exhaled sharply. He looked like he wanted to say more, but before he could, a sound echoed in the distance, soft but unmistakable. A whisper in the wind. A warning. I turned, instinct prickling in my senses. Something wasn't right. And then, the air rippled. A pulse of dark energy surged through the night, making my skin crawl. The torches by the castle doors flickered violently, as if the flames themselves were afraid. Malfoy stiffened. Shit. I didn't need him to tell me what was happening. We weren't alone. I turned just in time to see the shadows shift, and from the darkness, 3 hooded figures stepped forward. Their presence was suffocating, the air around them thick with unnatural cold. Death Eaters. Malfoy swore under his breath. They weren't supposed to. The closest Death Eater lifted their wand, cutting him off. Move aside, Draco. Malfoy's jaw tightened. He's mine to deal with. The Death Eater laughed. A low, cold sound. Not anymore. Their masked face tilted toward me. The Dark Lord grows impatient. It's time you stopped hiding. I clenched my teeth, my fingers itching toward my wand. I wasn't hiding. Then prove it. The Death Eater stepped forward, wand raised. Come with us, or we'll make you. Malfoy turned to me. Don't be an idiot. I inhaled slowly. My heart was racing, but I forced myself to remain still. And then, in the space of a breath, I moved. My wand was in my hand before the Death Eater could react. I flicked it forward, and without even speaking, a wave of raw energy blasted from my fingertips. Not a spell. Not normal magic. Something deeper. Older. Mine. The Death Eaters were thrown backward, their robes whipping violently as the surge of power knocked them off their feet. The very ground beneath us trembled, as if the castle itself had felt the force of my magic. For a split second, there was only stunned silence. Malfoy stared at me, eyes wide. One of the Death Eaters coughed, staggering back to their feet. What? I lifted my wand again. And this time, I knew I wasn't the one who should be afraid. Tell him, I said, my voice steady. Tell Voldemort that I am not his to claim. The Death Eaters hesitated. They had come expecting a frightened student. They had found something else entirely. Finally, after a long, tense pause, they turned and disappeared into the night. Malfoy was still staring at me. He swallowed. You. I turned to him. You should go too. He hesitated. Then, after a long pause, he shook his head and muttered, "You're going to get yourself killed." And then he left. I exhaled slowly, my hands still trembling with leftover adrenaline. I had made my choice. I would not be afraid of my power anymore. And if Voldemort wanted to take it from me, he would have to fight for it. I returned to the castle that night with a new kind of certainty. Harry and the others would protect me if they could. But I wasn't going to sit back and hope for protection anymore. I was going to fight. And I would win. Because for the first time since this all began, I believed in myself. And that was something even the Dark Lord couldn't destroy. And so, the journey comes to an end. The whispers of the past settle into silence, and the echoes of magic fade into the stillness of the night. The battles fought, the choices made, each one a thread in the tapestry of destiny. You have walked the halls of Hogwarts, faced the darkness that lurked in the shadows, and discovered the strength that has always been within you. Feel the weight of the story settling gently around you, like a warm cloak on a cold evening. The castle stands tall, its ancient walls holding the secrets of countless students before you. The torches flicker softly, their golden glow guiding you back to a place of rest, a place of peace. You are safe now. The night is calm, the stars watching over you like old friends. The wind hums a quiet lullaby through the trees, carrying with it the magic of everything you've seen, everything you've felt. Breathe in. Let go. Let the world of spells and secrets drift away, like mist dissolving into the morning light. Sleep calls to you, gentle and steady, like the rhythm of a heartbeat. And as you close your eyes, remember, magic is not just in the wands we carry or the spells we cast. It lives in the quiet moments, in the dreams we dare to chase, and in the stories that stay with us long after we wake. Rest now. Sleep deeply. And let the magic of the night watch over you.